For this project, the easiest, most simple circuit I would like to create with you is just a continuity tester. It's just a simple circuit with a switch, but it allows you to test if something is conductive or not. What you see before you is 3 examples of simple ones I have previously made. This is a very handy thing to have when you're starting to work with soft electronics, so you can test if something's conductive or not, if your sewing traces, if they are working or not. So simply you can just take one of these conductivity testers, take some kind of metal. When you touch the metal, it closes the strip and the light comes on. You can also touch it together to test that it's working, but anything metallic, it should test. Also, if I want to test if something else is working in a different circuit, I can check from this edge of the circuit here to this edge of the LED, and if the light comes on, then the trace is good. Today I think we're just going to make something like this one. I'm going to take you through step by step how to create the circuit, starting with this trace here from one side of the LED, then going from the LED, the positive side, because we have our positive here, to one side of the safety pin. Then underneath the battery, you'll see there's a small piece of conductive material here, and this goes back to this safety pin. Now, this safety pin is a very, very simple way of making a battery holder, just so you can test stuff before you maybe would like to purchase a more traditional style battery holder. But once you close the circuit together, well, the light goes on. Sometimes it can be a little temperamental with this, but generally, you maybe need to touch the battery down a little bit because it's soft. Also, with this test circuit I made earlier, I realized I had an LED and I wasn't sure again if it was positive or negative. So I can actually just test it on here by touching one side to one side on the battery, and it also goes on without you having to use the crocodile clips. For this circuit, you'll need 3 safety pins. You'll need a needle. You'll need some conductive thread. You'll need a battery, and you will also need an LED. Some simple fabric. Here I'm just going to use some basic craft felt for this. Very simple, available everywhere. Also, it's good to have scissors handy. And if you need some other thread, perhaps you want to sew down stuff a little bit more securely before you sew the conductive, I would advise it when you're getting started, just to make everything just so. Also, I'm going to use a little bit of chalk here just so I can trace where I want to put my circuit within the fabric. So I've got a little piece of orange felt here. First thing I want to do is just to draw out where I want my circuit to be. So for this, you can make lots of more random shapes. The most important thing is that your circuit goes in a circle. For this, I'm going to put my first exit point for my safety pin here, and my second exit point for my second exit safety pin here. I'm going to place my safety pin around here and my LED here. It's good as well if you want to you can move things around and see if it's something you like. This could also be here, this could be here. You don't really have to worry so much about where your positive and negative is initially, because you can just make sure that the battery is placed in the right direction. So if this is going to be positive here, then I will put the positive to here, which means that the safety pin itself will be positive and underneath will be negative, which will go here. To get started, conductive thread can be a little challenging. If you've done any form of embroidery before and have used metallic threads, then you know that it can be a little challenging to sew at times. It's basically stainless steel, so it does get a little bit challenging to sew, but with practice it becomes easier. The important thing is, I'll show you, when you get the ends here, you have these kind of frayed edges. You need to be careful while you're sewing that these edges are kind of kept to a minimum. It means that you won't get what we call short circuits. Now, short circuits are when a circuit gets cut into. So if I bypass the LED here in the circuit, the electricity will flow through the easiest point rather than going through the LED. So if I push this down, it won't work. But if I take it away, it should work. Short circuits just mean that if there's something wrong with your circuit, I would double check that maybe a thread has got tangled around the LED. It's very important to keep your positive and your negative separate at all times. And that way you can guard against getting a short circuit somewhere. So for this circuit, I'm going to very simply find my safety pin. I think I want it to be around here. So I'm just going to place it where I want it. For this, I think I'm going to actually sew down the components first. So just take a needle. And a little bit of yarn, whatever color you like. I'm just gonna, this part of the safety pin here is actually going to connect to the conductive area. So I'm not going to sew through the hole, but just to mark it down so it's easier to handle later. I'm just going to quickly tack this down on both sides just to make the circuit easier to deal with. And obviously you can remove these tacks at a later date. Just very simply, just to give me some control of where I'm stitching. I'm going to just tie down one here because I need to get in here in order to put the conductive thread in. Now with the LED, I'm going to make this side positive at the bottom here. I'm just round near the head of the LED rather than the edge. I'm just going to quickly tack it down just to make it easier for me to connect my parts later, and still leaving a lot of space in order for me to attach my conductive threads. It's very important that your threads are really connected down to the metal bits on the LED. It's got a really good strong connection here. This will make your life a lot easier later on, so you don't get loose batteries, etc. So I'm just going to simply tack this down, and I can remove that later, and you end up with something a bit like this. So with the conductive thread, I'm just going to take a piece. I think to start off with, it's good to have a fairly large piece. It does get tangled, so you don't really want to have too short a piece. And because we're going to have some tails at the edge here to attach our safety pin to, it's always good to leave a fair amount of length. So simply, I'm just going to start off with a simple knot here, but leave a long thread at this part, and this is going to be our tail. I'm just going to make myself a little knot in the edge here. And we have a tail at the end to attach one of our safety pins to. So for this trace, we're going to simply sew from here to the circle in the safety pin, and then back to here and leave the end. The way I like to do these kind of stitches, but you can do it any way that you want, I just do a very simple running stitch. Obviously you can use an embroidery hoop as well, or any kind of material that you find. I quite often use hoodies or neoprene, and of course I'll be showing you later in this Inventure how to embed this kind of sewing into your knit projects. So, simple running stitch. When you get to the hole there, this is where you really need to stitch a lot. You need to make sure that this connection to the safety pin is very strong. So go round a lot and make sure that it's really touching, because that is your connection. If it's not touching very well, you're not going to get a circuit. Oh yeah, and be careful not to tangle your LED. I think when you get started, it's definitely better to have more of a connection than less. I feel like it's better to be safe than sorry. So as you can see, we've got a very strong connection to the conductive thread to the safety pin here. So what I'm going to do is just basically go with the running stitch back where I came from. And you see we have like a line, and it's doubly conductive. So it's not just one single line. I've gone back on myself. It just makes sure that you have a good solid connection both ways. So now I'm just going to take one of my smaller safety pins, just again with the edge, just tie this through, and again thread this guy through as well. Oh. Here you can remove the needle. So what I do here, I open it up a bit. I just wrap it as much as you can around the safety pin, again to get that nice strong connection. Just tie this in a knot here. So we have our first trace. Now we don't want these straggly bits lying around everywhere. So one tip of the trade here is to use clear nail varnish. I've tried a lot of other different types of sticky stuff, super glue, etc. But I find if before you cut any knots in your project, I like to just dab a little bit of clear nail varnish, or any nail varnish really. Just depends if you want the colour. I have some sparkly stuff I quite like. And we just give that a minute or so just to dry out before we cut the next thread. So I've actually started the next trace in exactly the same way as I did with the previous one. So I've left a tail, left a little knot here. I've done a running stitch, and I'm now doing exactly the same thing, but just round the LED as many times as possible. Just be careful when you're sewing LEDs, because you can quite often accidentally catch them like this around the LED, and when you pull, it kind of catches onto the other side. So you need to be incredibly careful that you don't accidentally do this when you're sewing, because this will short circuit the LED and it will not work. It's quite difficult to see sometimes if you've got like a busy knit project or you know, a busy pattern and you're trying to figure out where your short circuit is. It can be quite difficult to see it, so just be very careful when you're sewing around the LED, just to make sure that you don't accidentally catch the other side. And again, once you're finished, getting a very good connection on the LED. As you can see, I've sewn around a lot here. So it's a strong connection on here. So again, I'm just going to go back where I came from and follow the stitch line. Back to where the tail sits. Then we're ready to do the same thing with our safety pin. Just attach it on. Same with this guy. So this is another technique where you just sew repeatedly through the safety pin instead of opening it up and wrapping. Either technique, whatever works, as long as the connection is very strong between the two. And as you can see, because we're coming to the end of the thread here, it's getting very splitty. So you have to be very careful with conductive thread. It is a challenge to sew with, but worth it in the end. So again, I'm just going to make a knot here. I'm just going to straighten this out a bit. And I'm just going to take my trusty nail varnish. Just put a little drop on here. And we're good to the next part. This last part to connect our circuit is slightly different because unlike this, we're not leaving tails at the end. What we're doing is we're connecting this side of the LED, not with the safety pin, but we want to create a little area of conductive sewing underneath where the safety pin is. This means that when the battery sits like this within the safety pin, it means that the safety pin does not touch the material underneath that is going to connect directly to the LED. So for this, I'm just guesstimating roughly where I want my conductive area to be. So it's somewhere around here. I'll just make a little mark in the middle here. Also, this differs slightly in how I sew between two components is slightly different. For this, I start sewing in the middle between both components. I think it's good to start your circuit away from where you want to sew it from. That means that your ends are not going to be around the part that's important, that it's not going to short circuit. So for this, I want to start my sewing around here. I'm just going to leave the tail on top. And again, leave yourself enough of a tail to make a good strong knot. Again, I'm just going to do a running stitch, making sure, see, it's tangled in the back here, so I'm just going to untangle this. So, pop it through, and again, just start again. These tangles at the back you need to be a little bit careful of because again, they can create short circuits that you maybe don't realize are there. And then you'll be testing and wondering why it's not working. And then you'll realize that there's a big knot that's touching between the two lines. So for this, I'm just going to run my running stitch again, same as before, to the area where I want a lot of conductive thread. So I try and keep it inside the safety pin, just so it's got less chance of short circuiting. So I'm just gonna sew a few lines in here. These thick conductive threads they can sit a bit funny in the fabric, you know, because they're quite thick. There is a lot of material there. So you can see it kind of curls. I mean, that's okay in this instance, as we're going back over and over and over on each other. But yeah, just be careful that it's not knotting up too bad in the back as well. But it does like to tangle, conductive thread. See a little knot there, but we got it out. So I'm just putting quite a bit of stitching into this area. Again, making sure that you're not catching the safety pin, because you're trying not to sew the safety pin. The safety pin is attached to your other side of the circuit. This will be the bridge of your battery. If you're positive and negative on the battery touches, then your circuit will not work. And see, we have a good conductive area here, and there's a good chance that the battery is going to connect to a part of the conductive area. Do one more. Go. I just like to make sure that the safety pin isn't connected to the thread that I've just done. So back we go, the way we came. So instead of tying off in this knot here, which we did before when we were making our traces, our ends, I'm just going to carry on now towards the LED. Again, I'm just going to sew a lot of the area around here, just to make sure that we have really good connection between the two. When you think it's too much, I would do one more. Why not? just on the back, just make sure that the positive and negatives are separated as well. But once you're finished, again, you just run your stitch back to where you started and find the tail from that you left before, this guy here, and we're just gonna make sure everything is nice. We're just gonna tie a knot. I like to do a double knot first, and then we get our trusty nail varnish. And just put a good dab on the knot. Don't worry if you make a mistake and it's nail varnish, it does kind of pick off a lot of fabrics. You can just kind of remove it. And you can also always pick this out and start again. Yeah, we're just going to give this a minute before we test. We've just given this a minute. I'm just going to take my scissors here, chop off the thread. Give it another little dab. It's always good to test, but realistically your circuit is now complete, but we'll just test from here to here is conductive. Here to here might be conductive. Nope. It's a good sign. So let's see if our circuit is working as expected. Let's just put a positive in here, like so. And we have light. This is just a very, very simple example of what can be done. But I feel if you learn this very, very simple way of creating a simple circuit in soft fabric with a battery and an LED, then once you've learned this very simple technique, you can add more LEDs, add programming, add various different things to your project and really make it light up or make noise. The possibilities are endless. Now to finish off, I mean, you can just leave it like this and it's perfectly fine. It does the job. For me, I like to add a little bit of embroidery just to make it a bit more fancy. Also, you can sew the edges. You can make it like with the, I just knot up some fabric over the wires here to make it a bit more secure. You can, in this instance, fold over the felt and make something like this one that I made. It's exactly the same with the same type of felt. just with a little bit of blanket stitch and a little bit of knotting, and I left a little hook on it so I can hang it up. There's also the option where you could make a pocket. So if you close it up like this and you can see where the LED is, you can make a small hole. And just push the LED through. You can still get in to change your battery, and then you can just sew around the edges like this. I mean, the possibilities are really endless. You can make a design here. This could be an eye. I'll let you know what I create off from my simple circuit when I'm finished with it. But I hope you've enjoyed this very beginning of our adventure together. I'll be doing more workshops as the month passes on and we get closer to Christmas time. It would be nice if you can comment, feel free to get in touch. It would be fun to hear from you all and see what you're working on.